lot of us do. But
Yep. This next episode documents a very tragic and horrific, yet very important piece of American history. It's known as the Battle of Mogadishu. A lot of you know this from the movie Black Hawk Down. This episode is going to be broken up into three different portions. The Black Hawk Down Battle of Mogadishu portion will be released tomorrow, October 3rd, on the 30th anniversary. I can't believe it's been 30 years. The 30th anniversary of the Battle of Mogadishu. And this is this individual's last time that he's going to give his full testimony on everything he's witnessed during that event. And it's a real honor for me to be able to do that. And like I said, this episode is broken up into three different portions. We start with his career at Delta, which you'll hear today. Tomorrow, it will be all about the Battle of Mogadishu, Black Hawk Down. And the day after that, we will wrap up his career at Delta, meet his beautiful bride, and talk about his transition and what helped him reintegrate into civilian life. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please welcome retired Delta operator Tom Satterly to the Shawn Ryan Show. Please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Head over to Apple and Spotify podcasts. Leave us a review. Tell us how we're doing. And as you already know, there are thousands of reels for download for free in the description. You can use them, get creative with them, make money off of them, put it on all your social media channels. All we ask, just tag the Shawn Ryan Show and give us a little credit. We love you all. Enjoy the episode. God bless America. Tom Satterly, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks. Really appreciate you having me on.
It's an honor to have you.
Yeah, quite the honor for us and me. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
So I think we connected through your friend, Chris Van Zandt. He came out here. We did an interview. Awesome human being. And he had so many good things to say about what you and Jen are doing with All Secure Foundation. And he wanted me to make sure that I think we talked about it too on his episode.
Yeah, you did.
So this has been a long time coming, and I don't even know how to introduce you, man, but I'm going to attempt to in a minute. But I just want to talk about this interview you have 25 years in military, correct?
Yes.
20 of which is in Delta.
Yeah.
And it would be damn near impossible to cover everything that you've seen and experienced through 25 years of war. And, but we're going to do the best we can. So
it's hard for me to remember all this stuff.
I'll bet it is, man. But I just want to say, I don't want you, as we go through this interview, I don't want you to assume that I know anything about you. I want you to be as descriptive as possible, because you've seen so much, you've experienced so much, and your story, I think, is a very important piece of American history that I want to document. And we're going to obviously discuss very in-depth mental health. And so the way I want to do it is it sounds weird saying this to you, but I want to qualify why you're relevant to talk about post-traumatic stress, traumatic brain injury, mental health. And we do that here by going and digging into your past. And I know some of it's very traumatic, but I just appreciate you being here, and it truly is an honor, man.
No, thank you. I appreciate that.
And, this is going to be released on the 30th anniversary of Mogadishu. And when you walked in here today, you had said that today is the 30th anniversary. I'll let you finish it.
Yeah, of Task Force Ranger occupying Somalia, moving into Mogadishu.
Probably not a coincidence.
Yeah, you know what? I don't believe in those. And I didn't even know today was the day until I saw it, on the USASOC page or something. It was just, I was like, oh, wow, okay. At least I've forgotten it. At least I've forgotten that, a little bit of that part of my life.
Yeah. Do you want to forget it?
I do. I don't want to forget all of it, but there's a lot I don't want to remember, when you do, it's more traumatic. It re-triggers the trauma. And so there's a limit to how much and how long you should be recalling these stories and regurgitating them, whether it's on stage or in a movie or anything, because your brain doesn't know the difference between reality or not. So as I talk about those things, I hate the word trigger. It resensitizes me to those moments and days, and I think about it. And I couldn't tell you what I think about. It's just a deep sadness that comes over me of that time.
Yeah.
And everything lost. It's not a specific moment, really, because they were all pretty horrible. And then the ones that weren't horrible, are not as memorable.
Yeah. I can understand that. Well, let me give you an introduction here. Attempt to. So, Tom Satterly, you were a command sergeant major, retired at Delta Force. This is going to be your last interview on Mogadishu and what happened in Somalia. You're the founder of the All Secure Foundation. You are a husband. You're a father. You're a Christian. United States Army Special Operations Command, 25 years, 20 of which was in Delta Force over at Fort Bragg. 1 Silver Star, 4 Bronze Stars, 2 with Valor, 4 Defense Meritorious Service Medals, 2 Joint Service Commendation Medals, Meritorious Service Medal. The list goes on. I don't want to bore you with your own medals, but, just like I said at the beginning, you've had a hell of a career, both in the military and outside of the military. And I want to cover as much as possible. But everybody that comes here starts with a gift. So got a little something there. So not the traditional Vigilance Elite gummy bears. I'll give those to you downstairs. But this is, we talked a lot last night about brain health, right?
Yeah.
And we got into talking about mushrooms and functional mushrooms and stuff. And so this is from Laird Superfood. And that's a creamer. There's also a coffee in there, and there's a functional mushroom blend. And so it's a functional mushroom coffee.
Nice.
It's a functional mush. It's called Performance Mushrooms. You can put that in with your coffee, and then that's a creamer, which also has, you guessed it, Performance Mushroom blend. So but it's super good for your brain. It helps with cognition, focus, energy balance, all that stuff. So
can I just take it all at once?
Well, if you want to, but test it out, see if you like it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I appreciate this.
My pleasure.
This is cool. I love brain health and work, man, because I need it a lot,
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of us do. But I kind of mentioned at the beginning, we definitely want to hit on mental health. And so I thought it would be good. Usually we wait till the very end for that, but with what you're doing with All Secure Foundation and everything that you stand for post-service, you have a chapter in your book that is a very good description of post-traumatic stress. And so I was hoping before we actually start and get into your story that you could kind of talk about post-traumatic stress like you did in the chapter of that book.
Yeah, I'll give it my best to do it like I did in the chapter. To me now, and I end up telling stories like from back then and to now because they're two different perspectives in my life now. And I see that post-traumatic stress is that thing that we try to get those who, it's a biological change in your body from a traumatic experience. And so many warfighters just think that I've trained through this. I've been trained for this. I'm good with this. I don't have post-traumatic stress. And our mission is to teach them that you've been trained to go to war. You haven't been trained to come home from war. You have no idea how to do that. And the repetition built up over the years of muscle memory, doing the same thing, being rewarded for violence and aggression. And then you come home feeling like a god. You move into your house again and you take over the family. And if you're retired or done with your job, you kind of present that to them. You don't just change who you are when you come home. It took you 10, 15, 20 years to get that way. You're not going to change back. You're going to have to put in a lot of work, and you can't out-commando it. I tell people, no matter how badass you are, you can't just stop this from happening. It's biological. And you can't tell me it didn't happen to you. You just can't tell me that. You have civilians that see something on TV, they get post-traumatic stress. You know, you get in a car wreck, you get post-traumatic stress. And that biological change or traumatic brain injury, the same thing, you know, creates suicidal ideation. It creates the whole I'm nobody, and the depression sets in. And then you start beating yourself up. And then you start feeling like I'm the only one that feels this way. And that's more isolation and less telling of your story to people. And then you start thinking, well, nobody understands me anymore. Nobody gets me. No one will ever get me. That takes you down the path of suicide and suicidal thoughts and ideation, which we found out that the percentages of personnel with suicidal ideation is pretty high. The higher up levels of units that you go is daily. Talking to all the veterans in active duty that we've talked to, can be daily. I want to run my car into the bridge. Just when you're angry, ending that argument, ending that feeling is what pops up into your head. And so then we move into secondary post-traumatic stress. A lot of people don't even know about secondary post-traumatic stress. We call it the eggshell syndrome, where when I go home or somebody goes home and they're behaving like they behave, you know, they're giving directions like they do at work, and they're acting like everything that happens is going to be life or death. That's because your brain doesn't know any different. Your brain knows chaos, something out of order means death, possibly. So just because it's the kid putting the dishes and leaving it in the sink, to you, that's chaos. To you, that's wrong. That can't be right. And the reason it can't be, it's got to be corrected is because we could die if not. And that's what your brain thinks. So it takes years of therapy, years of coaching, and starting with the thing that affects you most, I believe. When I started getting help with post-traumatic stress, it was like a transcendental meditation. One of those. I went to anger management first, and then Jen was like, you should try transcendental meditation.
What
Like,
is
sure.
that again? What
Transcendental meditation.
Transcendental
basically
meditation.
Yes, basically more meditation to me. I didn't know any difference. And I was like, sure, I'll try that. You know, I was flirting with her. I wanted to marry her. And it was one of those things. I'll do anything to not be a rude person. And so I started transcendental meditation, which was a bit at the time woo-woo for me. You know, it was like, no, that doesn't work, but I'll do it for her. And I went in there sitting in front of this doctor, and he's talking to me, and he's like, okay, and snaps his fingers, whatever it was. And he continued to talk, and I was doing my thing. And I just came back to him. I'm like, what happened? You know, what just happened? How long has it been? He was like 20, 25 minutes. I'm like, you're kidding me. You know, your guy was like barking like a chicken or something, like clucking and flapping around. He's like, no, you were just relaxing. And we were talking. So that started it. That started my belief that you could do things. And so I just kept going to change.
You were talking in meditation
Apparently, yeah.
about
Under my breath. He didn't really tell me. He goes, you were just venting. And I don't know if he could hear what I was saying, but it was one of those just, I don't even remember a lot of it. You know, I was like, I woke up from a sleep.
Interesting.
But I was just staring at him like I'm staring at you. We were closer. And then I was like, what happened? Because I knew it was some time. It's like, you were just resting. And then you find out that traumatic response, being biological, causes your body to twitch and shake, and that your body releasing that trauma that is stored up over the years. So post-traumatic stress is biological. It's something everybody gets when they see a traumatic event, and it takes effort to get out of that, depending on the repetitive traumatic events, and then stacked on top of each other, and then your fight, flight, or freeze never turns off. So you're always in fight mode. And you have to work to reset that. You have to work behavioral change to reset and change how you behave as a human, because you've grown used to that over so many years. And the secondary post-traumatic stress is when I come home and bring it and throw it over the family. Everyone has to walk around, and we call it eggshell syndrome, where there's like, all right, I change who I am so you don't become who you become. And so I'm no longer who I am as a spouse. I've become different just to cater to this issue that came home. And spouses don't even know they do that until you bring it up. And then they have that awakening of, oh, I have changed who I am. I have become somebody different. Maybe I should work on that. And then that can be the cause of people growing apart. You're no
Mhm.
longer who you were when you met.
Interesting. That's a great explanation. And now the secondary PTSD I've not heard of until you guys were talking about it last night. So thank you for enlightening me.
No one does everywhere we go. We're to the point of we think we've been doing this for 8 years and we think people know what's going on. And every time we go to speak at military bases or anywhere, post-traumatic stress, sure, we've heard that. How about secondary post-traumatic stress? 2 or 3 hands will go up in a room of 300. Like, still
Where did you first hear about it?
studying, research, probably Jen. Just digging into what we were doing. We tell her, we're not the doctors, we're not the psychologists, we're the lighthouse. Come in, we've lived the story, we didn't study the story. And so it's one of those, we can talk about it. What makes you a professional? How many years in college versus how many years of hands-on? So am I professional in post-traumatic stress? I'm a professional in having it and what not to do. And so I share that with people. Here's what I went through. Here's how I tried to get help. And here's how that help worked for me. Will it work for you? Maybe, but why not try it?
Yeah.
It wasn't negative effects on me. So you should try everything until something works. You wouldn't give up at work. So I try to get people not to give up at home.
Yeah. You said I think it was either you or your wife, Jen, said another statistic last night that I didn't know. And I believe it was 140,000 veterans have committed suicide
On the high end, yeah.
on the high end.
Compared to 5,653-ish, that number might be off a bit. I think it was 5,550, and then after the 13 Marines in the final, it jumped up. Compared to the suicide over the same amount of time, you can be between 60 to 140,000, depending on who you listen to.
Okay.
Of course, the government wants to lower that number, right?
Yeah.
But through all the research and study, we know the people that actually dig into it, it's a lot higher.
That's a big problem. There's just it's snowballing.
Yeah.
And so well, thank you for the brief. And I want to paint a picture of how real this is before we dive into your story. But let's dive into your story now. Where'd you grow up?
Yeah, I'm a Hoosier, Columbus, Indiana. I was born in Seymour, Indiana, John Cougar's town. And then, I grew up in Columbus, Indiana, which is a little small town, cornfields. It's just one of those, probably smaller than this town, really. Back when I lived in it, it was just the good old country. Not even the country. I was in the middle of the country, in the city, as you would call it, in Columbus. But yeah, pretty normal private school life growing up. We went to Lutheran school first 8 years, and then moved basically on where I lived. I went to junior high at one high school, and then I finished high school at another high school.
Oh, okay.
So just moved around. Lived in the same place. It's just the way it's set up, because I went to the private school for the first 8 years. It threw me out of that public school system. So I had to join the public school system, and I had zero plans in life. It was like kids, I don't know, the kids do. And started moving up to graduation, I was like, what am I going to do in life? I had no idea. I just started swinging a hammer and building houses.
Well, before we get there, what were your parents? Who were they?
Oh, yeah. Steve and Martha, they're both passed now. My dad passed in, I think, 18. And my mom passed probably of COVID, before they knew of COVID, on January 2nd of, I think, 2020. And and that was, and I have a brother and a sister as well. I'm the youngest of the family.
Were you close with them?
Try to be. I spent 25 years away from my entire family. So, and they pretty much lived in the same area their whole lives. So they grew up visiting each other and seeing each other and still hanging out and growing old together, really, as a family. And I was gone. I'm the guy that came home and visited at Christmas, maybe every 2 or 3 years for 2 or 3 days. Told stories and, I'm still alive, and then back. We communicated and we were close. We were always close, but via phone, letters, communication.
How about growing up?
Yeah, my mom worked all the time. She went to school all the time. She went to school all the time and worked. My dad worked all the times to help fill in that void for her going to school. And that was just, I think, a childhood event for her that created her to love the attention she got for good grades that she didn't get at home in her family. So that carried into her adult life of going to school all the time for that confirmation of I'm somebody. You know, my dad was a guy that would just support her. They met very, very young, 16 maybe or younger. I mean, his whole life. And both of them were only with each other their entire lives.
Wow. You don't hear that very often.
No. And they had us all very young too. So I can imagine the struggles my parents went through growing up to raise us as kids. You know, I look back on that now as an older person. It's an older person. And I'm so grateful, you know, for what they did and what they taught us.
What did your dad do?
He was a tool and die maker. So he, you know, whatever that means, he'd make small parts at machine shops for engines and things for Cummins Engine Company,
Okay.
where they make, I think, a lot of the Cummins diesel engines in Columbus, Indiana. So he would make the smaller parts for that they needed. And that's pretty much what he did his whole life.
What were you into as a kid?
Running around, getting in trouble, playing army in the woods, shooting each other with BB guns and bottle rockets through the downspouts of your gutters and stuff, trying to get more distance. And it went from the little army guys and blowing them up with firecrackers on the hill to each other with BB guns and don't pump it up too much, you know, and then shooting bottle rockets at each other just to have fun. You know, we had an empty lot next to our house. And it was just grown over in weeds and grass and trees. And we mowed like a path through it. So you couldn't see straight in. And then we cut out a circle in the middle and put a tent up. And that's where we'd spend all summer, just in that tent. And, you know, in the day we're running around, and at night we'd run around even more, you know, just parents would just let us go. I was a third, like I said, so they had done it by then. They knew I wasn't going to die, and they knew I wasn't going to break it. You know, I might break it, but I still wasn't going to die. And so they had settled down as the third kid. They're like, yeah, go off and have fun. You know, you'll come back one day. So that was pretty good.
Sports?
Yep. Yeah, I ran track and played football. I started out doing the speed thing, like, oh, you're going to be fast. You know, try to give me to high jump. I'm 5'10", you know, I think 6 foot was the highest I could high jump. I was like, that's the limit. And you got people high jumping way higher than that. So they moved me to the 110 high hurdles and the 330 low hurdles. And so I ran the hurdle race for a while, and it was killing me. Short legs, you know. I made it to regionals one time, but I was the only 5'10" guy there running that race, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm running with the dudes who knock every one of them over and still win. And I'm just trying to hop up and over these things as I run. Like, well, you're kind of stronger long distance, so let's do the 1 mile, the 2 mile, and then I moved into cross country. And then I played football, but you know, I wasn't very good at football.
Yeah.
I think I made one touchdown in my life, and it was probably an accident. And I was a guy that was a good defensive guy, right?
Yeah.
I could block a punt or I could tackle, you know, somebody pretty good. But it was one of those, you know, there comes the ball as a wide receiver. And I'm like, I don't know what to do with that thing when it gets here. And that whole mindset of I'm going to drop it, you know, and telling yourself you're going to drop the ball. And of course, I dropped the ball. So I sat on the sidelines a lot. I gave basketball a try for a bit.
What kind of trouble did you get in as a kid?
You know, things like swimming in the river, jumping off the waterfall that I wasn't supposed to do because people drown there every now and then, you know, climbing on top of empty houses and jumping off. And then we would run around and take somebody's Volkswagen in their driveway and turn it sideways, you know, pick it up with a couple of friends and turn it sideways so they couldn't back it out without doing a 100-point turn, you know, things like that. Just kid fun, you know, cornering cars and putting
Just being ornery.
Yeah. Those little drink cups off the golf course that look like cones.
Yeah.
Would take a bunch of paper ones and line them in the street like that at night, and the cars would come up and see them, and then realize they're paper, not spikes. You know, we're like, I'm gonna throw sand at them and take off running. Did that to a cop once. Didn't realize it was a cop. Immediately, and lights on us as we run up through the golf course trying to get away. Terrifying moment, but we kept going back.
But nothing serious. No arrests. No gang activity. Nothing like that.
Nothing. Small town.
Did anyone in their family have any interest in the military? Or
My brother joined as a junior, and he went to basic training in between junior and senior year in high school. And when he was in senior year, I was a freshman or a sophomore, and I made fun of him. He came back, had the haircut. He was all Army, ready to roll. And I made fun of him. You idiot. You're joining the military. You joined the Army. You're so stupid. I'm going to go to college, you know, and had no idea. And his career went up until he got diagnosed with a disease that he couldn't stand anymore. So he ended up teaching. He was going to teach at West Point for a bit. He was a drill sergeant for a while. And Yeah, and I never thought that I would join the military, so I ended up making fun of him. But he tried to make a career out of it, and he would have, And I could tell by the way he still talks, like he misses it. When somebody doesn't complete something that they wanted to complete,
Yeah.
and by no choice of theirs, you could tell it was in his heart still.
Well, what got your interest?
A friend of mine, one of my best friends in high school, had joined the military, and I'm like, "You're crazy, man!" It's like I'm off to basic training, and then I'll be back in about 2 or 3 months. And so I'm swinging a hammer. Graduated high school swinging a hammer, building a house. I thought, this is cool. I'll do this the rest of my life. And then he came back from basic training, and we were on our way to a John Cougar concert, driving in the car, and he's telling me all about basic training, and he's going to Germany, and he's going to have a good time, and getting out of Columbus. And I thought, man, I'll never leave this town if I don't make this jump right now. And he kind of just gave me that boost. And that was like an hour and a half drive at the most. That kind of changed my life of, I want to do this on a whim. I'm going to go in for 4 years, get some college money, get out and do some college, finish college, really. Parents just started covering college. And college to me was a party, so they didn't work out. And so when he had that idea of he was going to Germany, I thought, man, I can get out of the country. I can go visit something for free. I just got to go through a couple of months of whatever, that sounds great. And he's alive, so it can't be too bad. And so in that hour and a half drive, I decided I joined up there. I went to the MEP station and signed up that was probably late summer of 85. And I ended up coming in February 86.
You got to be kidding me. So you joined just to get the hell out of Columbus, Indiana.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's
go
it.
maybe to Germany and
get
have a good time.
$3,500 or whatever they were going to give me for college back in the day. You give us 1,200, we'll give you 12,000 or whatever it was, which I've never used. So I want my money back. But yeah, it was on a whim. It sounded good. And I had no plans to do more than 4 years. And I probably thought I'd do as little as possible while I was in. I had no idea what I was getting into.
Wow. And that turned into a 25-year career, 20 of which at Delta.
Yeah. I think I blinked and I was like, what happened? What happened?
I wasn't expecting that.
Everyone's like, tell me your background and how great, and your Civil War grandparents, great grand. I'm like, no, nothing. Yeah. I grew up thinking my great grandpa, my grandpa one of them was in bed on oxygen all the time as I grew up. And the other one was missing a leg and in bed all the time. And I don't know where the stories came from. He lost that on a landmine, and he got that from mustard gas or something, or and I was like, oh, so I told that story for years until I think talking to my sister and brother, like, no, he was never in the military at all. I'm like, where did that story come from? Somebody told me something, So maybe the grandparents were spreading a little, I don't know, a little disinformation out there, maybe. But I never considered it until that drive up.
Wow. So, well, what did you join to do in the military?
I was going to be a medic.
Did you look at all the branches?
No. I walked into the recruiting station. Whoever jumped up and grabbed me, he was in the Army, so I think I was heading towards the Army. Like, hey, we'll be stationed together, and I'll put in for Germany. And I got in there, and it was, hey, what do you want to do? I want to be a medic. My mom was, studying to be a doctor. She was going to school to do that, and she ended up running hospitals administratively as a nurse. And I thought, I'll get into medical fields, and this would be the best way to become a doctor. I'll be a medic in the Army. And they talked me out of that. Like, do you like to blow stuff up? I go, that'd be great. You like to build things? I go, yeah. He goes, about combat engineer. I said, that sounds cool, right? I know now they needed to fill a quota, right? They steer you towards what they need the most.
Yeah.
So yeah, I signed up to be a combat engineer, and it was my first visit to St. Louis or to Missouri, Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. I like to call it Fort Lost in the Woods. It was just, I remember being a tick-filled environment, heat, humidity, ticks, and drill sergeants that just chewed your ass every second of the day.
Oh, you went through basic in Missouri?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Basic and OSA and one station unit training. So I never left Missouri. After basic, some people packed up and went to another post to learn their craft.
What year is this?
This is 86.
86.
Yeah, and I stayed at the same place with the same drill sergeants who already knew how to chew your ass. And half the group got to pick up and move out, and you kept in touch with them. Like, oh, it's like living in college. We're in the barracks. We got to do what we want. We've got times, and I'm like, I'm still living basic training, man. These guys are still treating us like shit. And then packed up, moved to Germany. I got 2 years in Germany. I was like, yeah, my buddy's over here, And so I went and visited him a couple times, and ended up getting married. on the way to Germany. It's like one of those things like, I'll never see a girl again. I should get married right away. You know, I don't know what I was thinking. And then Jen later's like, you didn't think there'd be girls in Germany? Claudia Schiffer, hello. And I'm like, well, you know, I was 18 or 19. I didn't think of shit. It's one of those quick marriages that, yeah, it was a girl I just started seeing for a little bit and we ended up getting married. And so that put me in Germany for 3 years. If you show up with your spouse, you get an extra year. So I stayed in Germany for 3 years. And it was one of those, you learn a lot in the regular military, you know, and it's great. It's necessary. And you learn a lot of what you don't want to do anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a platoon sergeant that was a former Hungarian soldier. And he knew a bunch of different places in Europe to go train. And he was pretty cool. He introduced us to French Commando School, German Ranger School, platoon confidence training, which is taught by Green Berets down in Bad Tolz, Germany. And all of those things that I ended up doing and getting the taste of, I was like, oh, I like this. This is more than Motor Pool Monday, changing the oil. And, you know, because I was an APC driver. And it was fun, you know, as a kid driving an armored personnel carrier, and, you know, and doing all that. But it gets old, the maintenance, the boredom, you never go anywhere. You don't do anything. There's no money. And then when you get a little taste of more, it's like, that's what I want. You know, that seems more of like, I like to do, the excitement, the adrenaline. And that's when I started leaning that direction.
Interesting.
The day I figured it out was the day one of my close friends from basic training was over there as well. And he had a picture of his dad holding him as a baby. And he's wearing his dad's Green Beret. I thought, man, I want to do that. That's cool. And I want to do that. And that's what I set out to do. It just took a bit to get there based on getting promoted fast in the regular Army and then not having primary leadership development course, which the Green Berets won't take you unless you have, but the regular Army wouldn't send me because I already made E5. Like, we'll send the E4s to help them make E5. You'll go later. And I'm like, well, I can't get the bonus. I can't get in. So I just had to take my own path. So I think I re-enlisted for jump school just so I can get to Fort Bragg somehow, which worked. And then I ended up looking for the recruitment station on Fort Bragg, found it right away and signed up. And
so you wanted to be a Green Beret. The command wouldn't let you in. So you were
found
like,
my
well,
way.
this is where they're all at.
Yeah. Found my way there and did it myself. The only thing I lost out of that was $20,000, you know, the reenlistment bonus. And it was like, kind of devastating back then, right?
Yeah.
An extra 20 grand when you're making E5 pay, but
well, what was the reenlistment for?
it would have been reenlisting for the Green Berets.
They let you, they knew you were
They
going.
would have let me,
Okay.
but I didn't have that school. So that was the one thing holding me back.
Gotcha.
The regular Army wouldn't send me there. So I just reenlisted for jump school.
Okay.
I got jump school and then that sent me to Fort Bragg.
Gotcha.
And that's where I started humping it and looking around for the recruitment station.
How'd that go?
It's pretty good. Went in there and I mean, it was kind of easy and it took a little time and they're like, all right, SFAS date, you know, right here. And then SFAS was a nightmare in itself. You know, it was one of those introduction to a selection process. I remember I was being terrified the night before I went. It was one of those laying in the bathtub with a sick stomach. Like, what have I done? You know, what's going to happen? Your mind's going crazy. Like, they're going to kill me. They're going to stomp me. I won't be able to make it. You know, I'll never do it. And I went and tried it and it was kind of fun. You know, it was a nightmare, but it was kind of fun being tested like that and then passing each hurdle, you know, feeling a little bit better about yourself each time. And it just gave me a taste of, I want more, you know, I want more of this. And after
You still wanted more.
yeah, it was addicting.
Well, how long were you in service before you went to selection for the Green Beret?
Probably about 4 years.
4 years.
About 4 years. 3 years in Germany, so maybe 3.5 years.
Okay.
And I was in selection. And then right after that, I went home. Selection took me up to Christmas of 89 or 89 or 90. And then I had a little break over Christmas, and that was when Panama happened. So that year, I went back home on vacation, and Panama happened. I'm like, I'm missing a war, you know, I'm missing a war. And you feel like, oh, I didn't get to test my mettle. I came out, airborne unit goes down to Panama, and I'm like, I missed it. And so I started the Q course early the next year, did the 6 month there. And then moved into language school for Persian Farsi. And no, I don't speak it. It was one of those 4 months of sitting there listening to some guy say some words. I'm like, man, this is not happening. This is not going to happen. You know, trying as hard as I could. One guy in class was doing his homework in like Cyrillic. I'm like, well, that's the guy you need. You know, I wanted to learn Spanish or something. You know, they were like Persian Farsi. I'm like, that means fifth group, doesn't it? Middle East. You know, I was thinking seventh group, South America, something. You know, and back then you have your ideas of what's cool and what's not based on no information. And to me, seventh group seemed cool. Fifth group, like, oh, Middle East. Little did we know, right? Because I got to fifth group as they were deploying to the first Gulf War. And as soon as I landed a fifth group, they all took off. And I stayed back because I had a selection date for the unit. And that makes you non-deployable. I'm like, number 2, right? I'm freaking out. Number 2, I just missed. I'll never go to war. I'll never get to go to war.
So how long were you a Green Beret before you went to selection for Delta?
2 months.
That's it?
Yeah. 2 months. I was in language school and I had there was 2 unit guys that were going through the Q course with me to change their MOS, because when you're in the unit, you still get promoted based off your job title. Do you get promoted faster? Yeah, probably. You know, you pull your secret file over here and that makes everybody interested. Like, a secret file, put him on top. You know, he's secret. And so it helps you, but they needed to change their MOS because they're competing with the same people of their jobs. So they went to the Q course to hope to get promoted quicker. And that's when I met them, but I didn't know where they came from. They never told you, you know, and I was in language school and they popped over at lunch break one day and like, hey, you need to call this number. You know, we think you have what it takes. We watched you in the Q course. We work over here. Do you think that'll be cool? You know, we're both from Delta. And I was like, is it better than this? You know, is it cool? Like, yeah, yo, it's real cool. I'm like, well, then I want that, you know? And he's like, call this number. I was like, okay. And I put it in my pocket. He goes, call it now. I'm like, what? He goes, call it now. It's recruiters who just set up a time to come and give me a PT test and psychological evaluations before they accept you. And so that started that process of doing that. I'd only been introduced to the unit one other time. I was in Germany and they had a recruiting briefing in the movie theater in Vilflick in Germany. And it was free 5s and above. And I was in E4 at the time. So I was probably in a year. And I snuck into the briefing anyway. And I sat down and there's a guy in a bad suit down in the front, you know, with one of those little circular projectors where the picture pops up and goes in. And I don't even know what they're called anymore. And he's got it on a screen in the movie theater. And he's just standing there. And it's a full arena, you know, and hits the little button and it pops up and it's just a shitty picture of the Earth, planet Earth. He goes, this is our training area. And then clicks it back off. Any questions? And I was like, I want that, right? I thought that back then. I go, I need that. And then somebody raised their hand. It's like, do you get more pay in Delta? He goes, if you're worried about money, we don't fucking want you. I'm like, I gotta have that. Hey, can you grow your hair long in Delta? If that's all you're worried about, we don't fucking want you. And I'm like, I love that dude, right? I love that dude. He's calling people out on their dumb shit. And you don't do that as much, you know. And the regular forces, it's just, you just don't do that. You don't call anybody out. He's calling people out. I'm like, man, he's saying it like it is. You know, he said, I don't fucking want you. Matter of fact, I don't even want to be here. He said, they make me come do this. And I was like, I got to work there. And then I forgot about it, you know, and then I saw the Green Beret picture. I'm like, oh, that's what I want. And so when they said, yeah, we came from Delta and we think you have what it takes to go to selection, not to be in the unit, but to go to selection. You know, they're very, very clear about that. It's like, all right. You know, I'm still young. I'm like, sure.
Did you ask them what they saw in you that?
No,
they thought you would make
didn't even
fit?
think of it. Didn't even consider it. You know, I asked him, is that better than this? Because I'm just not even here yet. You know, I'm still going to language school. And can I do this? You know, do I owe somebody anything? No, you can do anything you want. We'll do anything we want, you know? And so that's when, once they accepted me for selection, I finished language school and I had a selection date for that spring. It was non-deployable. Right. So I didn't know that. So when they packed up, went to, you know, fifth group packed up, went to the first Gulf War, I was like, man, I missed another one, you know? And so I'm back there with the sergeant major, one of the sergeant majors. And he's like, I heard you're going to Delta. You're trying selection. I go, yeah, I'm going to try. He's like, if you don't make it, you're going to group engineers and you're going to be painting no parking signs your whole career. And I was like, oh shit. They don't want to lose people to Delta. And if I don't make it, I'm screwed, man. I'm screwed. I'll never have a career here now. He saw me like a month and a half later, and I was already painting you curbs yellow and whatnot just because there was nothing else to do. He'd come up and he's like, I told you wouldn't make it. I told you you'd be in group engineer the whole time painting parking signs and whatnot. And I said, well, you did say that, Sergeant Major, but you're wrong. I did make it, and I'm only doing this until I leave here. And I think I left in like a week and a half, packed up, went to selection. And they were coming back. And when they landed, they were like, hey, who are you? And I'm like, don't worry about it. Out the door, man. Like, where'd you go? I was like, in 2nd Battalion, man. I ended up spending all your funds for the year end, by the way, and I bought you a bunch of shit, but I got to go. They're like, hey, the end of year funds, you got to spend or you lose it. They dumped that in my lap. So I just bought a bunch of computers for those guys. I had no idea what to buy,
Yeah.
I was nobody there. So I just spent all their money and then left.
What was selection like?
SFAS or unit?
Unit.
I compare the two. The unit was all individual. It was all self-imposed stress, self-induced. They didn't talk to you. You get all your instructions from the chalkboard. The only thing they would talk to you about was take your instructions from the chalkboard. Or do you need to see a medic? It was one of those things like, no, and I'll go see the chalkboard. And, they treat you fair. They treat you right. They feed you well. They teach you everything you could need to know. You could go to selection and not know anything, not know what the boots to buy, not know how to pack a rucksack. We literally teach everything you need to know. How to read a map from one over the world all the way down to, a 1 meter grid zone, and now that's a class just to your head, right? Mm-hmm. It's like a 6-hour class that you have to memorize to teach. Every class has to be memorized and taught exactly as memorized. And so whoever gets that class, the one over the world, it's just, we know that's the nightmare guy. He's going to study for 2 months to give that thing verbatim and word for word. And you have to practice in front of the selection sergeant major before the students come. And that's a nightmare. But selection was just an individual assessment of your stress and your decision-making while under stress. And land nav is one of those, under time, is one of those things that creates stress on you. That competition against yourself, against the clock when you don't know the time standards. It's just your next RV is. And you think you got it down. You're like, yesterday was 2, today was 3, tomorrow will be 4, and then tomorrow's 5. And you're like, oh, it throws you off. You get to the 4th one, you're like, that was a 5th one? Oh, a 6th one? You're like, and they throw you off, and they just keep adding weight. They keep adding distances. And you just keep dropping people. And you don't know who you drop. When you move into selection from admin, or there's an admin phase, an instructional phase, and then the field phase, the stress phase. And the instructional phase is instructors are talking to you. They're taking you around, showing you land nav. This is a hilltop. That's a saddle. Here's how you do a resection, intersection. And everything. And you're walking, they're giving you tips. They're showing you drink water while you're walking so you don't stop. You jog down hills, you walk uphill, you rest while walking. Just everything that you could ever want to know about how to walk up a mountain day after day after day with a 100-pound ruck on your back. And then when you get the meal with the steak and lobster that night, it's about to change, and you get up the next morning and issue you that orange rifle with no sling on it, saying if you lose this rifle, you're done. And a lot of guys would set it down on a tree, plot their map, and take off because you didn't have the rifle for the first 2.5 weeks. As soon as you go to selection, here you go. You getting that orange rifle that doesn't do anything. And so many people just set it down and forgot, have it, and take off. Where's all your equipment? What were your instructions about reporting into an RV? And you're like, well, here's where I'm at. Here's where I came from. What were your instructions? Pull them out and read them. All right, you pull them out and read them. Report this and that. Here's how you do it, and report them with all your equipment. Because where's your weapon? Your face just explodes, and you turn around. You have to go however many miles back to go get your weapon before you can check into that RV, which digs into your time, which ends up cutting you out of the process.
Yeah.
So it's just additional weight, additional miles each day up until the long walk in the end, and it's at your heaviest weight, at your least amount of strength remaining, and you do the 40-mile hike, and then you go through the process of the shrinks grilling you in the board process.
Before we get there, how long? This is early on. How long had Delta even been around by the time you went to selection?
70, 77. I'll get murdered for this.
Only about 10 years.
Yeah,
maybe a little bit more.
Yeah. And
they still do that today, from what I understand.
They do.
So
They
similar.
haven't changed selection since it started, minus two things that I know of. They moved the swim test to the end of OTC because it's a learned skill. But they originally put it into selection because you have to cross streams. And one person had drowned crossing streams. So they either, I don't know if they added it then or it had always been there, but they kept it there. And then they realized, well, it's a teachable skill. So we'll do it at the end of OTC. If you can't swim by the end of OTC, then you're out. And then they removed one of the RV points that the only difference was the elevation's all the same, but there's two different lanes sometimes. And this lane went up top of the hill, which I was in that lane. When you get to the top, there's a guy in a tuxedo sitting at the table with a candelabra and a steak dinner from the night before playing opera music. And you're like looking at it like, okay, okay, is this the right place? You know, am I here? Like, come on over. And I check in and you leave. But the other lane didn't see that. They just had a regular RV. So they took that out saying it wasn't fair. It might have altered something, but they're always trying to be fair. They're always trying to remove your excuses of why you didn't make it. You know, if I'd have had, or if I, try to remove all that, take away everybody's excuse. And so whenever you hear somebody not make selection, they either quit or they were pulled for time or injuries. You hear all the stories of, well, they took me, but then I told them I didn't want to do it. I'm like, oh, did they now? After all that work, you decided after the fact you wanted to quit,
Yeah.
after they accepted you, chances are they didn't accept you.
How many guys did you start selection with roughly?
Probably 90 to 100.
How many made it?
My class, I think, maybe 16.
That's
maybe,
it?
Maybe. They've had class with one guy made it.
They've had classes with one guy made
Yeah,
it.
they won't take you unless you make it. And one guy made that class. And of course, he didn't start OTC that 6-month period. He waited till the next 6-month period. So he had to stick around at the unit for 6 months with nothing to do. But yeah, they don't fill a number. They don't fill a quota, only if you make the process. And then you make the board with the psychological evaluations. And then they tell you, 18-month probation after OTC. And then they tell you selection's an ongoing process.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, every day.
How many, 10 years into roughly a decade, the unit's been around. How many guys had even cycled through or what was the
I was OTC 27 and they did 2 a year. Well, they do 2 a year. Did they do 2 a year back in the day? Probably not. There's still guys around from OTC 1. And, it's talking about the numbers the other day on a little chat group. It's like, hey, what number? I forgot my number. And it's always stuck with me, just 27, which means probably 13 years into the organization. But, what was the question about that? What was how many people? I don't even know.
How many operators were at the command at that, or how many squadrons were at the command at that specific time? 3?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think they just started up the third one.
Okay.
I don't know how long before that. Yeah, I don't know how long. And that's the squadron. I went to C squadron, but that's the newest squadron at the time.
So at the end of selection, you get this steak and lobster dinner.
Yeah, well, right in the middle of it, right before they send you to the woods, because you're in the barracks the whole time. Yeah, I didn't bring that up. You're in the barracks the whole time. And then that morning when you wake up, you get your new weight and they hand you that rifle and you grab all your new maps. They drop you off that evening and you spend the rest of the nights in the field. And they have 3 different base camps and they mix people up all the time. So you think people were pulled or cut. You don't see your people that you've seen before. That gives you that good feeling. You just see new people every day. And you're like, oh, so-and-so must have quit or got cut, and you start, it could bring you down if you let it,
Yeah.
Thinking, oh, he didn't make it. Well, how? If he didn't make it, I'll never make it. So I don't know if they do it to be good or they do it to kind of mix it up, mess with your head. I'm sure it's all thought through, but there's only a few people that know those numbers, that know the timelines, that know at any one time, there's only 1 or 2 people that know that process and they don't ever give it up. I never knew it. We thought we had it. You would figure it out. You'd be listening to the radio as guys roll in and you're waiting to pick them up in the truck and take them back. And you get to know these guys, over the month that you're with them. And we're all sitting around the radio like, all right, Blue 32 is checking in the RV and they're getting ready to do the time standard. If he's going to go to the base camp or to the barracks, which truck's he going in, the go or no go truck? Like, oh, this guy's definitely a go. He's been kicking ass the whole time. And he's a Tango Sierra time standard. Move him over to the other truck. We're like, how's that possible? You know, another guy, he's a shitbag. He hasn't made anything on time. Roger, he's good to go. Move him on. So whatever that cumulative time is or whatever, it works out in the end, you know.
Interesting.
It's worked out in the end.
Interesting.
It's done pretty well over the years. So
yeah, seems like it. So how did they let you know that you did pass, that you're going to go to OTC?
You sit in front of a board of all the sergeant majors, all the commanders, all the shrinks, unit commander, unit sergeant major, and then whoever else wants to sit in the room to stare at you. And you're in one chair in front of them on a little stage. They just go around the room and grill you and ask you questions. Just, you know, well, what's it like to be an NCO? Or you go on a mission and it's a no-fail mission and you got a 6-man team and, you know, on the way in, one guy freaks out and, you know, what do? You know, some guys like kill him and bury him and continue with the mission. Other guys like pull the mission, you know, neither of which meet the criteria. So they're looking for that thought process. You know, I'm like, I don't know, I'd mark a digit, you know, leave a guy with him, go continue the mission. If I met minimum force, then come back, pick him up on the way out, you know, like, all right, you know, whatever. But now all the other questions. And then in the end, like, all right, step out in the hall. And then they do their little mind melding of, he's a shit bag or he's good to go. Cause I've sat on those boards 3 times now. So I know the other side. And then they call you back in, you know, after whatever length of time it takes, and you sit back down in the chair and then they just start looking at you and seeing what happens. And I remember they told me, you know, you're young. You're very, very young. And I remember some of the guys telling me going through selection, had gone through it before. Hey, don't worry if they don't take you. You know, they'll just tell you to go out and get more maturity or grow up or learn some more stuff, then come back. And I'm like, I'm never coming back this far. I'm never doing this again. This is too hard. I don't want to do it again. So I was terrified I would have to do it again. And if you make it, they don't make you do it all again, right? You do, you know, a shorter road march and an evaluation still. But I didn't know that at the time. I thought, I'm not repeating this. This is hell on earth. He said, you know, but we think you have what it takes. We think you know what it's like to be a leader and an NCO. I was like, that sounds kind of good, you know, but you're so young. You're one of the youngest we brought in if we bring you in. And I was like, this is it. This is that. And I just started dying inside.
How old were you?
23.
23.
Yeah. And I just sat there, and then one of them's like, yeah, but we think you have what it takes. So welcome to Delta. I'm like, huh? What? I'm just sitting there. And one of the sergeant majors jump up. We end up becoming friends down the road. He's like, he goes, come on, man, relax now. You said you were 12 Bravo, 12 Bravo 2. I'm like, huh? It's sergeant major. You know, it's like, relax, you're in, you made it, you know, at least for now. And I was like, oh my God. Send me back to the barracks. And there's like 5 people left, maybe in the barracks to go through, because I was one of the end guys. And bank of payphones, you know, and I'm like getting there, dialing home, you know, yeah, I made it. Like, what? I made it. And I hang up, you know, so you don't give up too much. You know, I know they're listening to all these phones, right? Whether they were or not. And, so we ordered pizza. We're like, hey, anybody remember the maps that are close to us? You know, there was like 5 of us left in the barracks. We got on the payphone and we started finding like on the maps that we navigated with. Oh, there's a town here. Yeah, let's call that town and find for pizza. And we actually had pizza delivered to the barracks, which no one's allowed to be down on that end. There's little road barriers that keep you from driving down there. So I just go past the road barriers and keep on coming. We're the last barracks on the end. They delivered a couple pizzas to us. But I'd already made it, so I didn't care about the other guys, what they thought. But they were all in. So, yeah, and it was just one of those wow moments in your life, you know? And then I guess
Who was your first call?
My wife.
Your wife?
Yeah.
Did she have any idea what Delta even was?
I don't think she gave a shit anyway. It was like, okay, you've been gone a lot. You know, are you going to stop going to schools now? Because I went to jump school. And then I had to go to PLDC, then SFAS, then the Q course, and then advanced non-commissioned officer course, and then language school, and then selection. And then I had another 6 months ahead of me.
Yeah.
You know, she's like, great. Are you home now? And I'm like, sure. For 6 months, I'll be in school. I'll be home every night. And it's not true. It wasn't true at all.
Yeah.
And so that just kept going, you know. But it was, I should have learned then in one of those fleeting moments of that, I did it, man. Oh my God. And the next day it's like, well, what? Now what? No big deal, right? It's everything passes so fast.
We're going to take a break here in a second, but I just have one question, and that is, during your interview process, what was What questions stuck out to you the most, if you remember them?
It was the one about leaving someone behind. If you had a team and you had a no-fail mission, you had to do the mission. I racked my brain. I was like, there's probably no answer to this one. There's no good answer. And so I just took the middle road. Like, I can't dive all in here. I certainly didn't think about burying the body, killing and burying the body. You know, it was like he was at a stress freak out is what it was. You know, he freaks out. He's just mentally unstable all of a sudden.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny that I forgot about that now that I'm doing what I do. That's weird. And I just thought, well, I have to leave him there with one other person. And if the minimum force was 4, if they didn't give you all that information, I'd go complete the mission and come back and pick them up on the way out, which is bad tactics to exit the way you came in anyway, but it seemed to work. It wasn't as harsh as burying the dude, but I mean, that's the one I remember. You know, that one and tell me your hardest NCO story. Because a lot of guys go through there from the Rangers or SF. They haven't been leaders yet, really.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they've been coming up on a team, but it's a while to be a leader on one of those, you know, in one of those organizations. I came from the regular Army straight. So I'd already been a squad leader, you know, and I had to deal with families. I had to deal with issues. And so my story to him was, you know, what was your hardest NCO moment? And the hardest thing to deal with, and I thought about it, I was like, it's families, because they don't get what's going on. And if the husband doesn't tell them, you know, they come in and yell at me as their leader, and I have to deal with this wife who's angry, screaming at me about her husband. I'm like, I'm a marriage counselor now. I don't even know what I'm doing. You know, and then I go talk to the dude. I keep your wife from coming into work, man. Because I don't want to deal with this shit, you know, and or go home and fix this shit, man. I don't want to deal with that ever again. You know, it was a terrifying moment for me. And she was a big girl too. And I told that story, and they were like, all right. And I think that's what gave them we think you have what it takes to be an NCO. I think you get it. Because maybe a lot of guys didn't get it. NCOs, I'm in charge of all these other dudes. And I'm like, yeah, the hardest thing I dealt with was a spouse, and she was angry, you know, and I don't know what to do with her. I can't order her to shut up. You know, like, I just had to sit there and listen.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that was one of the, you know, I remember that one too, that they had asked me that one.
Well, thanks for sharing that. Let's take a break. Did you know that 1 in 5 Americans have learn a new language on their bucket list? It's true. If that's you, check it off your bucket list this year, because with Babbel, you can start speaking a new language, foreign language, in about 3 weeks. Why Babbel? Because it works. Instead of paying hundreds of dollars for a private for terms and details. Check. Finishing selection and classing up for an OTC.
Maybe about a month and a half, maybe 2 months. I think I might have gotten there early. I think I got there a month and a half. I wanted to get out of 5th group. I had to get out quick. And I was there a bit early before they started. And I ended up, they had the memorial court. They were changing and altering that landscape coming in there. So I ended up raking a lot of the memorial court and building up some of the berms that are there now. So it was pretty good. I got to do that early on. But I just took me back to being in memorial court later. But yeah, early on. And it was, yes, I think normally 2 months is that break, because you do it spring and fall for selection, so the weather's similar.
Okay.
And what I learned, for all you listeners out there that want to do this, what I learned, because I've heard people love the fall. I love the spring more, right? It's getting warmer. There might be snow on the ground, but you don't go to the field till the end of selection. So the chances of it being are less and less and less. There's no leaves on the trees. So you can see the terrain a lot farther away, and you can read your map better, you know, with the terrain association. Or in the fall, it might go into snow when you're in the field, or at least crappy cold weather. There's still all the leaves on the trees, and other than the ones that are falling, you know, so you can't see the terrain. And then all the leaves that have fell cover up all the logs and rocks that you twist your ankles on. So spring is a bit wetter, you know, but I just used to walk and think, oh, time to change the water in the boots, and then splash through another trail that was a creek, actually, you know, an 8-mile long trail that was an 8-mile long creek. Just every now and then, time to change the water in the boots, because it just doesn't matter anymore, man. You know, let's just keep walking. But I determined the spring was the best time to go, just for visual seeing the terrain, really.
Yeah. What was the anticipation like for you? Were you confident going into OTC? Were you?
I was getting there. I
Yeah.
had a lot of self-doubts, but I'd made a couple selections. I'd gone through a couple courses overseas. I was terrified now of the unknown. I didn't know what to expect. I thought I'd be judged harshly. It'd be too hard. I wouldn't make it. I'd fail. But I just kept going, and they ease into it pretty well. So, I mean, they do it pretty well, and you're taught by other operators.
And there's 16 of you.
Yeah, and we're broken into 4 teams. And Bob was on my team.
Bob Porras.
Yeah, I was on the team.
No shit.
Yeah.
You guys were in together?
Yeah,
That's awesome.
Will White and God, I think Danny Nichols was our 4-man team. Yeah, and it just starts out pretty chill. Little briefings on how to dress and what to wear, and not look like an idiot from an old 1970s book. They needed to change so you didn't look like an idiot when you put on those clothes. But it's that generational change. Guys up there in that baby blue suit trying to tell you how to dress, and with Dress for Success book and stuff, and then I'm like, you're in a baby blue suit, man. I thought that went out in the 60s or 70s. So we go buy our own stuff, and I ease into BRM, basic rifle marksmanship, and it just starts all over. Like selection, you might be the best shooter in the world, but they start back at the basics, because that's how you become a good shooter, right? Doing the basics well. So guys who thought they were great, they brought everybody back down to pull the trigger, laying down on the prone in the bay, put a penny on your front sights back in the day, and pull the trigger until the penny falls off, you suck. I'm like, man, I did this in basic, man, So it starts off slow and you feel confident doing things, and then it ramps up, and pick up. But yeah, the anticipation was pretty cocky in selection, because I felt good. I didn't get lost. I felt good. And one day I got lost. It terrified me. I took off running the whole time. Luckily I ran in the right direction. But seriously, lucky. I got terrified. You're going down a finger, and then you end up down this finger, and you make it fit. Now you're 2 miles away from your RV. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm running out of time. Took off running terrified, but made it. So I was pretty confident. I used to go into RVs. Once I see the RV truck, I'm like, all right, stop. I'd pull out a comb and I'd comb my hair, dry my face, and I'd go storming in, even though I was a miserable wreck outside the RV. And I'd go storming in. Here's where I came from. Here's where I'm at. All right, your next RV's on the hood of the truck. Plot it. Come back. Here's where I'm at. Here's where I'm going. Have a good one. I'd take off, drink a cup of water out of their little thing, and take off in the middle of, off into the wood line, and fall down and go, where the am I? And where am I going, man? I have no idea. Half the time I'd take off in the wrong direction. And then I was too embarrassed to cut back to the RV, because, when I was an instructor, I'd see someone take off in the wrong direction. I'd call in on the radio, hey, Blue 42 went off in the 180. And they're like, oh, God, we're going to be out here at 8 o'clock looking for him. So I would run all the way around the RV to go back in the right direction. And then I'd get to the next RV, and I'd stop, comb my hair, and go back in. And then I didn't know that mattered. I just didn't want to look like, disheveled and going in and nasty for some reason. And I got to read my cadre comments years later. I didn't even know they had them. Like, you got comments from selection in there? Can I see mine? This candidate knows, all capital, he will make this course. This candidate is very cocky / confident. And I'm like, oh my God, I was a dick, wasn't I? And it was all a fake. It was all a show to look like I knew what I was doing. And it worked, I guess.
I'll be damned.
But yeah, I was scared, but I was too cocky at the time. I made selection again. I know everything. And then you realize you don't know shit. But they teach it to you slow enough that it kind of breaks it to you easily, that you don't know anything.
How were you treated?
Well, it's a personality thing, because you get people back from squadrons. And it used to be, back in the days, all people would send the shit. The people they didn't really want, or that weren't working out, maybe, they'd send them to be teachers and instructors at places.
Mm-hmm.
And then the unit at least realized, we're sending people that people don't want to teach our new people. It's not going to work out. So they changed it to, you can't send anybody to be an instructor unless you want them back as a leader. One step higher.
Makes a lot of sense.
So, it's a good guy going to selection, but nobody wanted to go to selection.
Yeah.
So they'd send, here, the guys that aren't really, not that they're bad, right? Just not as good in that place. It's like when people don't make it in the unit, or they end up leaving the unit for whatever reason, they don't kick them out like, you're horrible, we hate you. It's like, where else do you want to go? Anywhere. You're just not for here, but we'll send you anywhere else that you love. We'll take care of you. So, they ease you into everything. It's kind of professional. The way that they ease you into, you don't know shit, And it takes me all the way to when I finished OTC and I made that board with the sergeant majors. And then they picked the squad and I went in and I met my team leader for the first time. Was on his way out the door to Beirut for 4 months. It's like, hey, here's Tom, your new guy. He looks at me. Good. You got a lot to learn. And he turned left. I was like, he hates me. That's great. He hates me, and I didn't see him for 4 months. But he was right. I had a lot to learn.
Well, let's rewind before we get there.
Mhm.
So you're in selection. They treat you pretty good. The unit had only been around for, what did we say, about 13 years at this time. So what kind of experience do your superiors have? Your instructors, what have they been involved in?
I considered myself taught in the era of maybe Vietnam vets-ish on, I considered a little old school, MP5s, grease guns. My introduction to close quarter battles was, okay, open the door, walk into this room, everybody take your point after teaching on the chalkboard, blah, 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 left, right, opposite guy in front of you. This is your point of domination. This is yours, opposite rooms. See that? Everything's 360, it's 360, but now here's downrange. Now look at all these targets. And I looked at all the targets. They all had guns. Every one of them had guns in their hands. You guys see these, Yeah. Okay, let's go back out and do it live. Like, you don't want to run through this a couple times more, crawl, walk around. He's like, no, we're going to run. Load them up, loaded up MP5s. And here we are. Chalk, walk, 100 miles an hour, and I'm like, we load up, open the door. We all go in, crack, 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 shot every one of them. Yeah, I'm standing there, This is the best easy job ever. That was easy. He comes in, he goes, how are your shots? I'm like, 2 to the head, man, just like on the range, How about back here? Oh, 2 right in the face, man. Awesome. Why? What do you mean, why? Why'd you shoot him? Because not one target in the room had a pistol in his hand. They changed every target out. He goes, that's 1. Next one, you're done. To everybody in the room. I almost start crying. I was like, we're going to get kicked out of here. If I ever shoot a no shoot again, I'm done. And they meant it. You were gone. And so that slows you down. Like that last look, I stopped looking at faces so I can shoot somebody in the face, and I started looking at hands. So most of my shots started going down to where the hands were, the bullets, and you follow up with the final shot. But it's a big lesson to learn, but it was a transitional period of, I don't think the instructors knew how to instruct as well. Go do it. Okay. How? Just do it, like we did. Because a lot of those guys had made it up in the beginning, and now they're instructors teaching. And so I called it the transitional period, and then after, when I went back to instruct, it was M4s and here's how you CQB. And now I'm going to walk you through it and we're going to talk. And the instruction was, in my opinion, so much better to teach, and I learned more about it by teaching. That's for sure. But yeah, that transitional period of the old school guys and the way they thought, and me being one of the newer guys coming in, one of the younger dudes, even in my own OTC class, I was one of the younger guys, and they're older, been in the Rangers for a bit. So I'm playing catch up. I'm playing a lot of catch up on. I didn't spend my years shooting on the range because we didn't have money in the regular Army. I didn't know. I knew demo because I was a combat engineer, and I'd done it in the Q course as a 18 Charlie as well. So which, that made that easy because I knew the math, and that's when everybody's studying. But now I'm in a place where I'm not better, because I don't have any of that training of marksmanship, CQB. I had no idea what that was. All that special ops stuff. I just didn't have a clue. So that was like drinking from a fire hose, but I loved it. I was young. It was cool. We got to go to cool places to train, learn how to drive from professionals. Like, man, this is awesome.
You retired out of there as a command sergeant major, correct?
Yes.
And so you've seen an evolution of 20 years of development.
Probably a couple.
How does OTC compare now to when you went through? It has to be night and day.
My last 2 years at the unit, I went over to range 37, which SF organization that teaches the Charlie elements. It's like a mini OTC. And one of the generals had wanted to reconnect because we broke the connections. We were at war for a long time, obviously. And so we had lost that connection with Range 37, where we draw a lot of people from, the Charlie companies of the SF guys. They're the higher element, higher trained element, that have gone through Range 37 training, which is more CQB and more shooting and things like that, at a smaller scale. We kept failing a lot of people in CQB for safety, doing things different than we do it. I don't want to say it properly, different than we do it for safety reasons, why we do it. So I went over there my last 2 years to try to reconnect, teach shooting and CQB to up that level of passing on the other end. So I brought as much as we knew from CQB. I took that element over to do some hits on the compound. Like, hey, I can get us in. I know people, so we go in and we do some hits on the compound. But first, there was a squadron that had to run through the POW camp and do their hit first as squadron training. So I'm standing in the POW tower in the middle of this thing, looking down and watching. I'm like, hey, let's watch these dudes do the hit. And it'd probably been a year I'd been away from that, even though I was still assigned there and it's less than a mile up the street. I'd been away from all that for, well, as a sergeant major, probably a lot longer than that, right? And I watched them go through and I was terrified, literally terrified of how fast they were going through. I had forgotten how fast it can be going room to room to room to room and you're done, when you're doing students so often and seeing a different element. So it kind of terrified me as to how fast it was. I'm like, whoa, everything looks unsafe, And so I realized that evolution, or I realized how fast and dangerous it really was and why those little things really mattered the most. And that kind of made my job even more important over there, teaching those little safety things, take that pause before you take that shot. There's no reason, to be in a rush to die. Don't run into the room, how to pie things off better, how to do it, just those little things to make you think differently.
Do you have a lot of, with the things that you've been involved in, you have, I don't want to say manipulated, but you have molded the unit into what it is today by all the lessons learned and everything that you've been through. There has to be a tremendous sense of pride that you had that much input, whether you want to believe that or not.
I was gonna say, I don't know. Yeah. When I left there, I didn't feel good. I didn't feel like I'd done that much, and I think we look at the unit like the unit gives you more than you ever give it, and I thought that early on, and I look back, I'm like, no, that unit took everything I had, literally. But then I gave it everything I had, really. That's the honest truth. I gave it everything I had. So it wasn't that the unit took it. I willingly handed my life over and over again to be there. I don't know that I ever thought that I changed anything other than by our actions, like in Somalia, rewrote the book on urban warfare. Why? I don't think we were designed to do that, right? We weren't. We got caught and stuck. And so we didn't really know. We hadn't practiced how to dominate a corner, urban warfare. We just took what we took, stopped where we had wounded. So big events like that. The helicopters hovering overhead and getting shot down. And then I saw it being repeated 15 years later in Iraq. It's like, you guys are forgetting these lessons. Bring extra water, never leave your nods behind. Don't circle the target and let everybody in town know exactly where you're at. Punch out and do something further out. Call them back in. It only takes a minute to get them back in, or 3 minutes. Can be a long time under fire, but at least your helicopter still flies, so learned a lot of valuable lessons that I've tried to pass on that I learned individually. But no, I never thought that I did anything grand that ever changed the unit. I don't even think I've considered that.
Well, grand or not grand, you know what I mean? It's 20 years of evolution you're a part of it, man.
Yeah. It's like a career. It's like a whole military career in one. And then I had 5 extra years added on that. But I was done at 20. I literally was 19. I couldn't wait to get out.
Well, we'll get there. I was just curious. A question popped in my head. So let's wrap up selection.
Mm-hmm.
You finish up selection, or I'm sorry, not selection, OTC.
Yeah.
And what happens at the end? How do you know you made it?
You go through like the the SEER kind of training. That's the last thing you do. Stick you in the box for 3 or 4 days, treat you like shit. And then you get rescued by a squadron. They bring you in your rags and they're handing you drinks and treating you like they just rescued you from the enemy. And they bring you back in and repatriate you with the American flag. And then you're done. It was kind of like, that's it. That's the end of it, huh? We're done. We made it. And then there's another board with all the sergeant majors to decide if they want you or not, and they get to chat with you about life. They get to read all your evaluations and how well you did and different things. And then they argue over who's going to get who, personality wise. And then they ask me,
How do they do it? Is it a draft?
yeah, I had a friend in A squadron. Who needs what? I didn't know then. I know later now it's a draft. Like C squadron needs more people. They get more pick. In what order? Who knows? They'll fight that out. But when they asked me, what squadron would you like to go to? I had to pause. I'm like, well, there's a sergeant major from every squadron here right now. If I say one, the other two are going to hate me. So my answer was, well, I don't really have a particular squadron I want to go to, but I do have friends in A squadron. So that would be the only reason I pick A squadron. Okay, cool. You're going to C. I'm like, all right, thanks. Why'd you ask me? You already knew where I was going, but you wanted to see what I would say about it. Just another little stressor, but they're fucking with you by then. You're kind of you're kind of part of a family that they know where you are, I looked at them like, you guys made it up as you went through. You were like OTC 1. Hey, let's shoot today. Yeah, you did a good job. You passed. I'm like, you guys made it up. It's doing great now that you've built it up. But when you went through, it's like, yeah, we're all done now. We graduate. Let's go do missions, But once it's professionalized, right? And hey, let's add this. Let's add that, and then it grows, right? It always grows. And so, yeah, it was one of those, I don't want to say what squadron, man. And I did, and then went somewhere else. I'm like, oh, I'm so now, but it was great. C squadron was a great squadron. I don't know that, I'm glad I went to C squadron, They're very similar to A, have those personalities.
What is when I always hear that there's different personalities to every squadron over there. Can you describe it?
Yeah, easily. A squadron is kind of a chill surfer vibe, if you will. B squadron, Rangers. Kill it, You see somebody walking from B squadron down, they'll deny this. Eye contact, half a mile hallway, all the way down till you get close. Hey, B squadron guy, that's the B squadron way, but look away. I was like, really? It was just a joke. And then C squadron was kind of like the good time party squadron, but work hard. And then the fourth squadron, which I stood up, was kind of like a mix of all three, which was hell on earth, right? Trying to get three different elements of people to agree on the same shit.
Do you guys transfer back and forth from squadrons at all, or is it you go there and you're pretty much there?
Not really, by exception.
Okay.
We've had a couple of people switch, like the fit wasn't right, and we're either going to get rid of you or I don't know, you're a good dude, but the fit, and like another squadron, I'll take him. Like, yeah, okay, little transfer over, and then they do great, So if it's a personality thing, they might move you to C because your skills are still there.
Okay.
Now, if you don't have those skills, this might be a good reason to just send you on your way, somewhere else. But it didn't happen that often.
How were you received when you went over to C?
Cautiously, very cautiously. Like people look at you like you're going to make it. They're friendly. Like my team leader, you got a lot to learn by. And it was like, oh my God. But that was him. Fast forward to Somalia. I asked him that question about, are we going to make it? I don't know. And he leaves. I'm like, damn, that was a perfect time for a motivational speech, not just, I don't know, but that was who he was. But my 2 IC and 3 IC at the time. And then I was the fourth guy, right? That was the size of the team, 4, and 1 took off. So we had 3. And that's what I spent my first 3 or 4 months working with. And then, 6 months later, you get another dump from OTC. And we got 2 guys on that dump. So we ended up having 6 for a little bit. But it's never been really full. Teams have never really been all the way full. Because it just, it's hard to find those people, to fill those teams that meet that criteria and will stick with it long enough and then don't fuck up.
When you get in there, I mean, do they consider you? I mean, they can't consider you a seasoned operator because you're not one.
No,
So
they don't like you. They don't let you do much. For 18 months, you're kind of monitored and trained. And then you come out of OTC thinking you can kick ass. Like, I'm the man. I'm so good now. I'm going to show these new guys what's up, or, show the squadron what's up. And you get there and let's go do some shooting. And they're destroying this target. And you're like slowly destroying the target. And they're destroying like mirrors and shit, riding from horses. Not really, but they're very good. And you're like, oh my gosh, I do have a lot more to go. And then let's go do CQB. And you're doing it very like deliberate and slowly, and they're gone. They're literally gone. Like, keep up, man. You're like, it's a little dangerous, don't you think? Like, no, it's not dangerous. We know what we're doing, And so they teach you those skills along the way of no longer instructed. We're showing you now, and this is the way we do it. And it's got to be fast. It's got to be perfect. It's got to be right on time. So you drink it from a fire hose for another 18 months. And then they kind of, all right. Let's kick it up a notch. Now you can probably go to schools. You can do other things like driving or climbing or whatever your specialty might be. It's a little bit more, you're trusted to go do that stuff now, versus we may end up kicking you out of here. So we're not going to waste the money on you, So it's very thought through. And I don't think that they do it on purpose to take the pressure off, but the way they kind of ramp it up and step it up makes it more easy than just drinking from that fire hose. But it always feels like you're drinking from a fire hose because you never feel good enough.
Yeah.
Like every day you're like, oh, man, I'll never be like that guy. And you don't find out till 20 years later that guy thought the same thing about you. And you're like, man, why didn't you say something on day one? We could have felt better for 20 years, So it's one of those judgmental places. But you judge yourself, you just don't fit in. You don't feel like you're good enough ever, because it's always a nonstop improvement. Because if you're not improving, then you're dying and you're stagnant and you're irrelevant. So you always have to keep up and improving.
So for 20 years, you felt you were behind the power curve.
Always. Even as a sergeant major, I'm like, how did I get here? These guys are stupid. I snuck in somehow, and now they're going to find out I'm a phony. And they're going to kick me out. It's just every day was a fear. Swiping that badge, I hear stories all the time. Shh, green, oh my God, open the door. You want to leave the squadron? Swipe your card, green, oh my God. Want to eat chow? Swipe to get in. Oh my God, it's green, And then every now and then, somebody will come to work and their stuff's red and nothing opens up for them. It's like, go see the sergeant major, It's one of those stressful daily things. Of swiping your card, not knowing if it's going to turn green or red.
That's how they let you know.
Yeah. Well, that's a good way to let you know in the morning. When you show up back at work and they had a long conversation the night before about you or something, you swipe it and it's red. You're like, I have no access to anything at all anymore. Walk around and go in the front door and see the sergeant major. It's happened a couple of times to people throughout the years. Going to the front gate and it's red, and they're like, what the, obviously they probably could figure it out. They've done something screwed up recently.
Who did you look up to when you got to see? Is there anyone in particular?
Matt Ryerson was a real big influence on me. He was a different team and a different troop, but he kind of took me under his wing. Like, hey, you want to go shooting competitions? I'm like, no, man, I'm already good. He goes, yeah, but shooting competitions adds the stress of beating somebody else in the time. Plus you can win cool shit. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I go to shooting competitions with him and shoot under stress and everything. And became pretty good friends that way, hanging out, even though he was on another team. I think he was a team leader on another team at the time. And he just kind of took me under his wing. My team leader was gone for a while. To be honest, I think he was more motivated, and he kind of grabbed me as a young, energetic kid and just started showing me those things that he did to improve his shooting and to make his life at the unit better. So that kind of bonded us early on. So I looked up to him a lot.
Is there any particular reason before that drew you to him before you guys started shooting together?
He had a calm demeanor, a real pleasant demeanor, like a father figure. He was just one of those kind personalities that when you meet him, and you're kind of attracted to that energy level. And that was kind of how it felt. And then he started bringing up, hey, let's just do some shooting, competition shooting on the weekends. I bring all my guys. You should come too. And I'm like, I don't know, am I going to get in trouble over here? He's like, nah, screw those guys. Come on, we're just shooting, So I'd go to matches with him, shoot on a lot of weekends for years. And I gave that up. It's like, no, it's too much work.
What kind of experience did C Squadron have before you came in?
Not a lot.
Not a lot.
A and B had done things up through the years, and C Squadron came in. I think they had some call outs, but didn't do much. I can't tell you if they were in Panama as C Squadron, because there's such a mix of guys in the photos. Some are C, some are A. And I think that when they built C, they did the same thing when we built D. You pull some from everywhere. But I don't think there was a history of doing much.
Well, what were some of the operations that they may have been involved in? Just Delta in general. Up to that point.
Any regional surveillance stuff, protection details around the world in high threat areas for ambassadors or generals, things like that. And then the smaller trips, down to different parts of the world that you'd take 2 or 3 guys and go, sort something out and figure it out and send back some information and kind of make a plan off that or execute it yourself. But it was one of those times where everybody's waiting for war, kind of waiting to get it. Now, did they hunt Scuds? Yeah, I think they started Scud hunt missile hunting in Iraq as well. And that was before my time, but I think that, I think that they were part of that as well.
Interesting. So you get into C Squadron, you're getting your 18 months through, you're in. What's the first mission?
In Somalia. First team trip was a skiing trip. That was fun. And then we started rehearsing. Well, yeah. And then we did some things early that year and then rolled into Somalia.
What kind of things?
That shit I didn't want to talk about. Those kind of things.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that year. Yeah, and it was just it was interesting stuff. Small team, interesting things. Like I think I talk about in the book where I, down in Bogota and went up to Tres Esquinas doing regional surveillance stuff. And the only people that go to Tres Esquinas are drug dealers or DEA agents, and I didn't know that. We took a flight from Bogota up there. 3 of us left 2 back in Bogota to do their thing. And when you land, you're like, oh my God, this is a horrible place to be. It's right on the equator too. So I got fried, right? Because the hotel shuts down the air conditioner about 2 every day because it's too much of a drain, So I'd go out by the pool if you're not doing anything. Of course, I got fried in like 10 minutes. It was a horrible feeling, but learned that lesson. Don't lay out on the equator. And then we decided to go out that night. Like, let's go out, just drive to the beach, right? Which is not a beach, it's a river. And there's a military checkpoint on the way out of town. Drugs, man. I didn't consider it. Checkpoint pulls us over. I'm in the passenger seat, guys driving, one guy's in the back. They start yelling at us, whatever in Spanish. And driver's talking to him. And he's reaching in for the get out of jail free card, and the dude doesn't like it. The guy on my side doesn't like it. He starts putting his G3. He shoves it in the side of my face and just holds it there. I'm like, hey, Jim, just stop moving, man, and then he sticks it in my mouth. And Jim pulls out this card, and that's when I grabbed the barrel and moved it. Like, dude, that's enough, and I was terrified. And he pulls it out, and the guy starts screaming, and we drove off. I said, let's turn around and go back right now. Let's go back to the hotel. I don't want to go to the river anymore, man. I was stressed out.
Doesn't sound very fun anymore.
I was stressed out so bad. I just had a gun in my face and my mouth, and we made it back to the hotel, and we went to the bar, and we talked to some people. I was like, yeah, we tried to go down to the beach, and they're like, beach? It's no beach. It's a river. And only criminals go down there and shoot people every night. We're like, I'm glad we didn't go to the beach, That we didn't even make it out of town. It was just one of those terrifying experiences. But that was early that year in 93. And then, then we started rehearsing for Somalia. And I know that different squadron and a different ranger element was rehearsing up to a certain point, and then they handed off because their time's up. And it didn't happen in that time. So we picked it up and started rehearsing.
What was going on in Somalia at that time that they wanted you guys over there?
they were starving millions of people with the food we'd given them, and they were using it as a weapon, and taking it out. And they had started attacking convoys. I think some Marines got attacked, and it was like, okay, that's enough. I know Packies had gotten attacked. And so I think it was when the Marines got attacked that we pulled the trigger to go. It's like it's time to go, today. My God, today is when we went. I remember when we packed. I mean, we never knew when we were going to go. We just kept rehearsing for it. And then maybe a week out from deploying, they're like, "Hey, we're going as Task Force Ranger."
What were you rehearsing for? Was it a particular hit that you guys were going to do?
No, just general. The AH-6s would come in and strafe a target, and then would come in and land and assault the target. And this is how we'll do it. We'll have a template. So when something comes up, we all know we'll go this corner, this corner, this corner. You'll know what helicopter you're going to be on. You'll know where that helicopter is going to land. That's all we need to know. You'll know what direction to run, and then you know what to do after that. So we developed a template so the planning process wouldn't have to happen. That once they got a target hit, we could launch right away. So in Somalia, when they ended up getting an intel hit, we would kit up, load up, helicopters would fire up, and we'd sit there and wait. And then team leaders would come out and scream some shit and point, and you don't hear them. You're like, got it. You land, you're like, what now? What do we do now? And you figure it out. But that we templated, we practiced the template, we rehearsed that flying, and then actually had a AH crash while we were going in. He was strafing. He just went too low and hooked his skid on a pine tree and crashed. And I remember we were the closest Black Hawk, and we were getting ready to rope and assault the target. And I remember the crew chief's like, I look up, he smacks me on the back, and I look up, because I'm number one on the door. And I look at him, he's like, all I heard was, "We're going to crash." Like, what? He said it again, we're going to crash. And I lean over, "Hey, we're going to crash." And I laid back on my side and tried to get dudes out of the door, He's like, "Go, go, go." And I'm like, "Oh, we want me to rope before we crash?" So I'm the first guy down the rope. And then other guys come down and he's pointing, "It's that way." And I'm like, "Oh, we've had a crash. There's another crash." That makes a lot more sense. And we took off running, in that direction of the heat and that he was pointing. And I came up and that little bird was on fire. Pilots were trying to drag themselves out. And my 2IC used to be a crew chief on a Black Hawk. So he immediately, the whole front's broken off. And he immediately ran up and the pilots are dragging themselves out of the way. We pulled him out of the way. He grabs a fire extinguisher and tries to put out the engines because it's still running. The jet's still running. It's catching the pine needles on fire and it's starting to spread. I'm like, we got to drag the pilots further. And he ends up throwing dirt in the intake. And it shuts the engine down. And because we're trying to pull the engine cut, but it had broken off. The whole front had broken off. So we finished the day training and then took those guys back and got them out. And then we practiced a down helo one time, thank goodness, because of that. And just rehearsing different missions, vehicle interdictions and things like that. And then it came up to like a week before they notified us. I think they knew something. It's like, hey, if we deploy, it's part of Task Force Ranger, so everybody has to go out and get haircuts. They have to look like Rangers. So when it finally happened, everybody finishes up their haircuts. We show up at work. We start to take off, and you can tell the difference between the Rangers who have high and tights with tan heads, and you have guys that used to have hair. You got white stripes, pure white stripes. It's kind of like when you're training foreign countries and they come in and you got all the studs with them, and then you got 3 pasty white dudes that work in a basement somewhere, and you're like, oh, I get it. You're the guys collecting. You know what I mean? You can tell the difference between who they are and how hard they work. So when they saw the white stripes in their head, I go, that's a dead giveaway anyway.
Yeah.
It's a brand new haircut.
So what was the briefing like when you guys were going over?
No news is good news. Tell your families that no news is good news. We don't know when we're coming back. We don't know if we're going to do anything, but we want to go catch a deed. We want to stop, and put somebody else in charge or remove who's in charge and see what happens and try to bring them back to the negotiation table.
Can you tell everybody about a deed?
Yeah, Mohammed Farah Hassan Adid. He was, his son was a Marine.
I did.
U.S. Marine, and he was over there. And then he went back over to take over.
Yeah, Adid, his son, Adid was a warlord in Somalia. His son was a Marine, came to the U.S., became a United States Marine, and then went back to Somalia to take his dad's job, correct?
Yeah. He had gone into hiding when they tried the AC-130 on his family compound or something. He went into hiding. So when we went over there, it was like one of those I don't know, how do we find the dude? Send people out, use other agencies, try to find him. It's not like you fit in much over there, it's kind of a particular look of people, and it's hard to fit in. So working that network, whoever was doing that at the time, I was just a young kid. All I wanted to do is run around and break stuff and shoot things, I didn't pay attention to much at that time in my life. The briefing was shit. Muhammad Adid was just a warlord that had power at the time, right? I mean, you got to hold power over there. So he had his little minions around him, and then around them, and they kept their minions in check. But they're all hungry for power over there, because to them that means I'm on top. I get everything I want. So,
And Adid was the warlord in charge. He was holding all of the food coming from the U.S. to feed. There's obviously a starvation problem over there.
The
And
good clans. So there are different clans over there. So it's kind of a clan warfare. Deed was one clan. The Habit Gader clan was another, maybe, or he was in the Habit Gader. I barely remember the clan names, but I remember there was a road that when you cross that road, it was all bad. When you cross the road coming this way, you had to be careful, because all the good people lived over here, and it wasn't always easy to determine when you cross that road. So people were always screaming, whatever, February 24th road or whatever. I don't remember the name of the road, but it was that distinct, like a moat in the middle. And this side was taking care of their own people and feeding them, and this side was starving to death. And he was trying to starve out the other clans so he could own it all. And we didn't like that, for whatever reason, we didn't like that. When he attacked the Marine convoy, it kind of set it off.
Well, before we get to that, I mean, before it all really kicked off, what were you guys doing over there? Were you getting out in town? Were you getting boots on the ground?
Yeah, we did signature flights like twice a day, just to desensitize when we do a hit, because every time we took off at night, headlights would be flashing on the hills, like to let people know. I mean, they were watching us. So when we took off, it couldn't be just for hits. So we had to desensitize them. So at least twice a day at different times, we'd pick up and just fly the city, drop in low, come back up, hop around like we're doing hits. So when it was a real hit, they'd be like, well, maybe they're just doing the same thing. We did a lot of that. We did 4 or 5 hits up to the main 3 October one, which were, combat to people on TV, to me, everybody else. The good guys come in, we make some noise, the bad guys lose, we come back, high five, tell stories. It's all great. I mean, that was good for 4 missions, which were boring missions of going after this, the first one I think was a UN compound that were dirty. Like, was this a confidence target that we hit? Because it was former UN guys, and it was almost a funny target, like weird. And then there was just dirty UN people that were taking equipment. So somebody turned them in. Then the next one was like, I don't know, some cop or something. Then it moved up. They were moving up the ladder trying to find who knew who. And so I think the 5th hit, when we got his money guy, Muhammad Atta, that was our VI. It turned into a VI right in town. The sniper shot the driver, shot the engine out, also shot the driver in the legs. Didn't really know at the time. They bailed, ran into a house. We roped down. They roped down and chased him in. And then they called us in because we were still on track, and we roped in. I know our team roped in right in the middle of an intersection. Immediately came under fire from down the street. So me and another guy took off running, like close ambush, right? Assault through. It was about 100 yards, We ended up about halfway down that alleyway before we realized this is a bad idea, and jumped into a doorway. And I turned around, the entire team's back behind us, behind a pile of rocks. I'm like, man, we f***ed up. Now we're up here. So that was a firefight. People kept feeding. Once we took care of that guy with that machine gun, somebody else ran across the road unarmed. It was like, Then they started shooting at us with the machine gun. We took care of that again. Somebody else ran across the road. It's like, they're unarmed, Finally figured out they're feeding the machine gun, and they know our rules of engagement, So we didn't let that happen again.
What were the rules of engagement?
You can't shoot anybody without a weapon, and a threat. So, you can't shoot anything that's not a threat. So if nobody has a weapon in their hand, they're not a threat.
Okay.
But to me, they were feeding the weapon, right? It's like a crew serve weapon. So I just had to stop that. It kept happening, and sooner or later it was going to be us. So I ended up not letting people cross the street anymore. I mean, it was bold and ballsy people. I mean, there was a lady all decked out in the black, dress, and covered up in the face and gloves, and she'd be walking down the street in the middle of a firefight like she's going to the market. I'm like, what's this lady doing, man? I guess they live in this shit, And then she points us out. they start shooting at us again. I'm like, okay, we're gonna have to draw. I can't let this go on. So I ended up pulling out beanbag rounds and chasing her off. And then I get called across the street to pull guard, and I got to pull guard on Osmanado, and then we took fire on that house. And then the Black Hawk came in and dropped one wheel on the roof of the helicopter. The parapet, people climbing up the tire and getting out. And that was my first engagement. I was on the second floor. We were the last team out, so we were pulling guard for the team going before us, climbing in the helicopter. I saw a guy across the street pop out with an AK and aim it up. And I'm like, whoa, okay. And I took a breath, and it jammed on him. So he was like messing with it. And I remember just thinking, okay, red dot, and boom. He either shot him right in the head or whatever. He disappeared in the room. His weapon flew out the window. And I started screaming for my team leader, like, hey, Pete, you see that? Pete, come here. I just shot this dude. And he's like, good job. Keep doing your job. And took off. It was just who Pete was. And I ended up moving to the roof to climb onto the helicopter. And it was one of those under fire things. I'm the last guy off the roof climbing up, the wheels spinning. It shouldn't be spinning. It should be locked. I'm trying to get up. People are pulling me up by my kit and pull me in, and made it out of that. I'm like, oh my God, that was crazy. Like,
Was that your first kill? The guy on the roof?
Yeah.
So that was
Yeah.
exciting for you.
It was like, I got to do my job, right? It wasn't a target. I got to do my job. I stopped him from shooting somebody. It's like a perfect thing,
Any
Almost-
hesitation at all?
No, I took a breath. Like, I don't want to miss was my hesitation. Not, oh, it's a human, and he's just doing what I'm doing, right? He's fighting for what he thinks is right. It was just training, right? Training. Red dot, pull the trigger. I didn't even think about it. I was excited when I hit it. Like, I actually did it. And then I got excited. Like, hey, come look at what I did, and it was across the street. He didn't see anything. He's like, good job. Keep doing your job. Okay, I guess that was boring, I don't know. And I was still high-fiving that shit, I was still high-fiving that stuff. There was more dead people on that one, the bad guys. I don't think we even had any wounded on that one still. Maybe a ranger had gotten hit in a plate somewhere else, pulling outer security. But then I thought, oh, that's combat. That was combat. That was crazy. I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know where it's getting shot from. It was all just, you could die in a second, you have no idea. And so that was my vision of combat, and then our next and last hit was 3 October.
Well, I'd like you to describe, a lot of us have not been over there. I've not been over there. What is it? What was it? How many people were starving? Were they just starving in the streets? I've heard stories about North Korea.
300,000, maybe.
300,000 people starving to death. Were there?
And he kept attacking the convoys of food. Sandy dirt roads. They had the Olympic Hotel. They had the Olympics there before. So it was in decline. Cactuses growing around all of the houses, just randomly growing. You'd bump into those. It was a nightmare. Just shit in the streets. It was just horrible. Every helicopter landing was a brownout. Every house, barely had water in it or no power. It was I don't know who would want to be in charge of that place, The airport wasn't running, obviously, other than what we fixed up. And I don't remember seeing much actually working over there. There's certainly no government. Locals probably knew where to go and stay. The Bakara market was a big black market of weapons and things. So, and that's actually where we did our last hit. But it was a shitty existence, It was one of those, I'd never seen anything like that before. People that poor, still living in cinder block or mud and rock homes, which can withstand RPGs, by the way. But they, very simple, very poor living. But some of them were pretty happy. Some of them lined up on the fence, tried to sell their stuff through the fence, to the Americans and whatnot. Guys go out there and buy some trinkets and whatnot. They weren't all horrible people, but I didn't learn that back then. And to me, they were all horrible. Even the porta potty guy who sucked out our porta potties, I'm like watching him, and watch that dude, he's collecting on us. I just didn't trust anybody, because they were the enemy. When you're, hey, we're going to Somalia, they're the enemy. Okay, all Somalians are the enemy then, right? I didn't put that, away till later. till way later. But it was a filthy, nasty, unkept place to be.
Well, before we head into 3 October, let's take another quick break.
Yeah.
Next on the Shawn Ryan Show. This is going to be your last interview on Mogadishu and what happened in Somalia.
What hurts me the most about the trash bags. Talking to one of the spouses whose body parts were in that trash bag. And she can't use trash bags.
This past weekend, we all reacted with anger and horror as an armed Somali gang desecrated the bodies of our American soldiers and displayed a captured American pilot.
I remember getting nervous, but still like, we're gonna be home for dinner, right? You know, just joking around. And then another RPG, I remember looking up and seeing it hit the helicopter, the tail of the helicopter.
You saw it hit.
Yeah, and it just started auto-rotating. I'm like, oh man, no, you know.
These tragic events raise hard questions about our effort in Somalia.
Hey everybody, I'm Shawn Ryan. Click here to subscribe to the Shawn Ryan Show YouTube channel for the hottest and most compelling interviews that you will not see anywhere else. I've also made a playlist of all the previous SRS episodes so they're easy to find. You can find that right here.